More than 24 Democrats in the House and Senate who've written a letter to President Trump. They're accusing him of failing to do enough to lower food prices in his first week in office. There's the letter. Among those signing on, Congressman Steve Cohen, the Democrat from Tennessee, represents Memphis and surrounding Shelby County and joins us on the program now. All right, Congressman, welcome. So on this issue, it's a big issue last administration, right, with inflation now. Beginnings of this administration. What could President Trump have done in a week plus? What did you want to see him do?
Well, he talks about putting down the price of eggs and groceries and defeating inflation. Of course, he was going to end the Ukraine war on day one. That was going to be over with, and all these other things. He really put out a bunch of stuff that was false, and he's done nothing to try to bring down the price of eggs or to make people's everyday costs less and to try to deal with inflation. Those things are really beyond his control, but he claimed that they were within it. A lot of things concerning the price of oil is determined by Saudi Arabia, and the supply chain is around the world, and that was affected by the bird flu.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of things that he can't control, but he said he could, and people believed him. But what he's going to try to do, his main thing he's going to try to do is get this big bill passed to give billionaires tax breaks and to give the rich tremendous tax breaks. And that's what he's about. You just saw it when he got sworn in. He had 5 or 6 of the richest 10 people in America behind him in the most prominent positions in front of his cabinet picks. So that's who he's going to be dealing with and listening to, including Elon Musk, who yesterday said something about a German group and said, in Germany, we need to forget over these disagreements of the past, get past that. It was this 80th anniversary of Auschwitz. Never forget Elon. And don't buy his Teslas. Teach him a lesson.
All right. Now, on the subject of what you were talking about inflation, let me go back to that for a moment, right? So that issue, I think it's interesting that you said it this way, that there's not much the president necessarily could do. It sounds like you're saying that's what the conversation we should have been having, too, in the last administration, where people were calling on President Biden. Understood. That did come up today in the briefing with the new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, and she said the following. Let's watch.
In 2024, when Joe Biden was in the Oval Office or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure, egg prices increased 65% in this country. We also have seen the cost of everything, not just eggs. Bacon, groceries, gasoline have increased because of the inflationary policies of the last administration.
So they're blaming it on Biden. You guys are saying, Trump maybe should do something about this, but you made the point. I mean, sometimes not much a president can do, right, about some of these issues?
Most of them are worldwide issues,
yeah,
especially oil and pandemics. But Biden did try to stop and did effectively stop the Kroger-Albertson merger, which would have increased prices. And that was shown. He went through the FTC and tried to stop that merger. He tried to put together a concrete plan to lower prices. At least he tried to take action. It did, and inflation came down. Egg prices might not have come down as much as we'd like, but inflation overall is down and employment was up, and President Biden left Trump an outstanding economy, the best economy in the world.
Let me ask you about 2 other issues. Spending, you mentioned Elon Musk earlier in a different context, of course, but he's coming in with this Doge operation, and now today we hear about the potential freezing of these loans and grants, and this is a confusion about what's going to be included. What's your point of view on that, the temporary pause, at least in some programs, even if others are exempt?
Well, first of all, it's illegal. Article 1 makes Congress the primary section in the Constitution, and we appropriate the money. And once it's appropriated, the president is responsible for distributing it and administrating it. So that's illegal. Just as saying that the 14th Amendment is not part of the Constitution and it's unconstitutional. That's another thing he did that is wrong. And the judge that first saw it said it was no attorney should have been attached his name to it because it was embarrassing how blatantly and on the surface unconstitutional. And then firing these inspector generals who were supposed to look out for waste, fraud, and abuse, and they were fired, and yet they were supposed to give 30 days notice to Congress.
Right.
So he's doing all kind of illegal things right now.
And hearing it from the courts and hearing it from organizations. A nonprofit is already sued, for example, over what we're talking about today. So I think there'll be more of that. The other thing I want to ask you about, and this may seem out of left field, but it's not, is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And you've made some comments about his confirmation I want to get to in a moment. Personal comments in some ways, because you're a polio survivor. Okay. I don't know if you saw this, but his cousin, Caroline Kennedy, has made some new comments today. I want to play those first and then get your reflections ahead of his confirmation hearings. Here's what Caroline Kennedy said.
Bobby, my whole life, we grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator. His garage, his dorm room were always the center of the action, where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in a blender to feed to his hawks.
All right, so called a predator, a quote-unquote predator by his own cousin. Congressman, as I said, again, your personal statement that I read, you've known him for years, but again, your situation medically, you kind of look at it in a unique way. So what's your view on Bobby Kennedy Jr.?
Well, of course, as I've said, I had polio, and I have the effects of polio now. It's called post-polio syndrome, and it's affected me and affects a lot of people who had polio. Bobby was fortunate when he was born, the Salk vaccine was already available, and he got it. So he and most of the folks in this generation never had to deal with polio or have friends have polio. We should not have somebody who has said that polio has some agents in it, the vaccine, that cause more harm than polio relieves. That's what he said. It's on tape. You can see it anywhere you want to look. He should not be the head of the HHS. We need to have the vaccines and the treatments that have been come about through the CDC and the NIH, and that the HHS has to approve, available for children and people all over the world, because these are panaceas and we don't need to fall back. And that's what happened with Bobby. Caroline Kennedy and her son Schlossberg both came out strong against Bobby Kennedy. They know him well, at least Caroline does. And what she said is true. I mean, I've known Bobby. I know him. He's not likable, but he does have he hangs around a bunch of people who don't have any understanding of the vaccines, and he pals with those people and works with those people and makes money with those people.
We'll watch that hearing tomorrow. And Congressman, we thank you for your thoughts today. Congressman Steve Cohen, the Democrat from Tennessee, joining us live.
Well.
Okay, major